Welcome back to Journey of Self-Awareness. I'm your host, Tato-san Harmon, and I'd like to continue this little series that I began a while back on spiritual practices. Perhaps you'll remember that I began by discussing why spiritual practice can be so powerfully effective at altering our perceptions, our view of the world, of our role in it. They can change everything for the better and make our lives so much better. Then I also discussed why they're so important in this modern day and age, and how in the contemporary cultural context we're often besieged with all kinds of maladies. There's so many people are experiencing psychological difficulties, depression, anxiety. We're under so much stress in the modern world and under so much pressure. So spiritual practices can be a panacea for many of the social ills that we're experiencing, not just individually, but on the collective level also. And you'll remember I did a video on finding the most effective set and setting, that is having the proper mindset and attitudes for engaging in a spiritual practice, and finding the right place to engage in spiritual practices so that you have a location that is most beneficial for, will maximize the benefit of your spiritual practices. And in my last video, we learned about the three foundational cornerstones of an effective spiritual practice, and why it's so important for us to commit to becoming good and better people, and to lead authentic lives that are grounded in ethics and morality, to engage in right conduct and avoid negative actions. This is, of course, fundamental and critically important. Then, if you'll remember, the second foundational cornerstone is the study and contemplation of sacred texts and spiritual scriptures from whatever tradition most resonates with you. Of course, there are very, very many spiritual traditions, and there's very, very many texts within each one. And these can run the gamut. They come from every continent, and so I think it's important, at first at least, to read rather widely and find a spiritual tradition that really touches you and really rings true to you, and then dig deeper and delve deeper so that you're digging one deep well rather than many shallow wells. If you want to strike water, you want to delve deep, dig deep, and not waste your time by a scattershot approach. And the third cornerstone, do you remember it? Foundational cornerstone: mindfulness, meditation, increasing your self-awareness through calm abiding, was sometimes known as shamatha meditation, and then there's the insight or analytical meditation, which can go along with your study of sacred texts and scriptures. So the practice I advocated last time was mindfully paying attention to the breath and bringing your attention into the present moment without wavering, and that every time you notice the mind begin to wander and follow a train of thoughts off, you can notice that and gently bring yourself back to the breath and calm, reflect, pay attention, relax, and pay attention. Those are the two that I advocate most strongly: relax and pay attention. And if you'll recall, I stressed the importance of integrating these three foundational cornerstones into a daily spiritual practice. This is how you'll get the most benefit from your spiritual practice. And of course, you can go far beyond these, and in future videos we will indeed discuss additional spiritual practices that you can incorporate into your daily session, but at the least, you want to commit to becoming a good person and conducting yourself according to the higher virtues, and spend some time every day studying and contemplating sacred texts. And then you also want to spend at least 10 or 15 minutes every day, maybe even twice a day, once in the morning and the evening, resting in open awareness and meditative, calm abiding. And the practice that I think is probably most beneficial for very many of us is to follow the breath, pay very close attention to your breath. And this is it's how the Buddha became enlightened, was by following the breath. So it's very recommended. There's other techniques, of course, also. You can pay attention to bodily sensations or your perceptions of things that are happening to you or around you in the environment. You can focus your attention on things like a candle flame, for example. And there are many, many guided meditations online. I encourage you to go online and take a look at some of those. I mentioned some of the contemporary masters in the field of meditation in my last video, so if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go back and take a look at it. So now today I want to talk about how to carry your spiritual practice with you into your everyday life. This is so important. You can't leave your spiritual practice in the meditation retreat or on the cushion. You have to carry it with you into your daily life. And one way to do that is to carry your commitment to becoming a good and better person, a wholesome person who lives a righteous and upstanding life, and carry this into the modern world, into the everyday world, by paying very close attention to your speech. This is what I want to talk about today. Watching what you say. This is a very profound and powerful practice if you can do it. Now, there are very many people who are unable to pay attention to what they say. They just blurt out whatever's there and whatever comes to them in the moment, and don't give it another moment's thought. Just take everything for granted and let it go. But this is the wrong approach. We want to develop self-awareness and mindfulness. And one good place to begin is to become mindful of what you say and pay attention to what you say. Of course, at first this may be difficult, but then later on, as you begin to practice it, you'll think about what you've said perhaps later on, and then you'll begin to catch yourself and notice what you've said right away, and you can think about it. And then eventually, as you gain self-awareness, you'll begin to contemplate what you're going to say before you say it. And then you may not say it at all. You may decide that it's not appropriate. So, as I mentioned, this requires self-awareness. And of course, that's the point. We want to develop increased self-awareness, and this is one very, very effective way to go about that. In past videos, I've discussed very many ways that we can increase our self-awareness. One of those is to pay attention to and notice our emotional reactions to things that are happening to us in our everyday lives. And that's quite effective. We should also monitor our emotional reactions. And as I said before, you may not notice them until after the fact, but it will give you fodder for contemplation later on in the day, or you can come back and perform your analytical meditation upon your memories of your emotional reactions. You can do the same with your speech. So monitoring your speech is a very effective way. It's a very powerful way to make sure that your actions and your words align and hew very closely to your uh, dedication, your commitment to leading a morally upstanding and authentic life, so that your words are living up to your highest ideals and are aligned with the holy virtues. This is the practice. This is the goal, to make sure that our words are in agreement with our ideals, the ideals that we're striving for. Of course, as part of our commitment to becoming a good and better person, there are certain kinds of speech that we should avoid. This again is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, there's things we should avoid, and on the other hand, there are things that we should strive for and try to incorporate into our lives. So, for example, we should avoid lying and being deceitful and saying things that are untrue. And we should avoid divisive speech. We don't want to create conflict or divide people or cause arguments or conflict or separation. No, we should try to speak harmoniously and engender positive relationships with those around us. We also want to avoid speaking harshly or being rude or hurtful or offensive. Of course, this has to do with anger also. We want to avoid expressing anger in the world because this is a poison that we're putting out, and it's affecting other people around us, and we don't want to spread these kinds of negative energies into the world. No, we want to express love, warm-hearted tenderness and kindness and compassion and sense of generosity in the world. So monitoring our speech then is a way to make sure that we're aligned with the higher virtues, the higher ideals. It's very, very important. So what else we want to avoid? Well, finally, we want to avoid gossip and idle talk and backbiting and saying negative things about people behind their back. It's so easy to gossip and put other people down. People do this almost as a matter of course. Again, it's a habit perhaps. It's something that people take for granted. They don't even think anything of it. It's just part and parcel of normal everyday life. But this is something that we need to learn to pay attention to. We need to monitor our words so that we can catch ourselves when we're engaging in gossip or backbiting or negativity. So, and then stop it. Don't continue. What was it your mother said? Don't say anything if you can't think of something nice to say. Was that? No, if you can't find something nice to say, then don't say anything at all. That's what my mother told me. And it's good advice. So instead of gossip, we want to be supportive and we want to act in ways that strengthen our positive relationships with others and make healthy connections with others. And so we should speak clearly, honestly, truthfully. We should express patience in our words. This can sometimes mean not saying anything at all, biting our tongue when we feel the impulse to say something that's harsh or derisive. We can bite our tongue and stop ourselves. So we want to use words that promote peace in the world and harmony and goodwill and empathetic understanding of others. This is important. I guess what I'm trying to say is that watching what we say can reveal a great deal about ourselves that we may not have been aware of. And this is one of the values of paying very close attention to your words and monitoring your speech. And let's see, for example, words can reveal our attachments and our desires, our clinging after, or they'll reveal when we're satisfied with what we have and we're grateful. So words are a reflection of the inner self, and the ego uses words, of course, which is one of the advantages to monitoring our speech, is we get to learn more about the inner sense of a separate self. Finally, I should mention that some spiritual practitioners carry this a step further and take vows of silence for periods of time. It may only be for a weekend retreat. It may only be act of silence for remaining silent for a meal. Or it could be for a whole weekend, or like I said, a week-long retreat. And some people will go much, much longer. And this, of course, is extremely powerful because it will force you to notice all of the impulses to speak and to say something. And it will make you pay attention to your motives for speaking so that you have a very clear understanding of why it is you want to say something. And it will make you realize the value of your communication, so that, if you have to write down what you want to say, then you may choose your words more carefully, and you may minimize your communications and emphasize what's most important. So remaining silent is it's a time-honored practice in spiritual traditions around the world, and as I said, it's extremely powerful and very, very effective, and it's something you might want to do on a short-time basis, but of course it's not for everyone. Most people aren't going to want to remain silent. It's just not practical for someone who's a householder or trying to get about in the world or maintain a job or raise your kids or whatever. So yeah, it's not for everybody, but just this simple act of paying attention to what we say and monitoring our words, as I mentioned, is powerfully effective, and it will give you ample material for later reflection, perhaps at the end of the day. For example, you might want to keep a notebook and write down instances that you want to reflect upon later, of things that you said or wanted to say or didn't say, or things that you could have said, or things you could have said differently. And come back at the end of the day and contemplate what happened that day. And you might even want to journal about it, which is very much recommended, because this is an act then of self-introspection, of self-reflection, of increasing our own self-understanding. It's part of the practice because it will naturally encourage you to pay more attention to what you say tomorrow and the day after. And so this practice will build upon itself over time and snowball, if you will. So yeah. So I just wanted to offer this powerful and effective means of increasing our own self-awareness. Remember, self-awareness is increasing your self-awareness. This is a lifelong practice. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that will have to be developed. That's the practice. And no one can walk this walk for you. You have to do the work. And as I mentioned, by monitoring our words, it not only increases our self-awareness and makes us more reflexive, but it also reveals our underlying intentions and our motives. And we realize that everything we say has the potential to either build up relationships or to break things down and hinder positive relationships. Everything we say has the capacity to foster kindness and generosity and or it can sow enmity and discord. So as you go about your life, I hope you'll make a conscious effort to pay attention to what you say and make sure that you speak in ways that align with your highest ideals, that are truthful and kind and compassionate. These are critical virtues for anyone on a spiritual path, and monitoring your words is a very good way to make sure that you're implementing these virtues, integrating these virtues into your daily life. So this practice doesn't require long retreats or, holding yourself up in a cave or a monastery or whatnot. It is a simple practice that you can incorporate into your daily life. You can do it every day. And I encourage you to do it every day. Some people will set a timer on their phone that goes off every 15 minutes or half an hour and reminds them to pay attention to their words and gives them a moment to check to see whether they have been paying attention to what they say. That's also possible. This is a very powerful practice, as I keep saying, that will transform your relationships with others, and it will change the way you view yourself in the world. It's so powerfully effective at transforming yourself and increasing your self-understanding and your self-awareness. Now, in future videos, we're going to talk about additional spiritual practices. As I said, I was going to talk about them in a kind of a more general sense, talk about genres of spiritual practice, if you will. And I'm planning videos on devotional practices and self-surrender, surrendering to the divine, which is a practice that you find in so many, many other spiritual traditions around the world. It's not something for everyone, and you may not want to, adopt a practice from one of these broader genres, but I'm going to be offering them in case you find them a benefit. In the meantime, I encourage you to try this out and watch what you're saying and do this in your daily life. Let your words reflect the person you wish to be in the world, and with time I think you'll find that you're not only monitoring your own words, but you're actually transforming your own life and your thoughts and your actions and your emotional reactions. It'll change everything. Well, thanks for joining me today. I look forward to continuing our journey together. Please be sure to support the channel by subscribing, hitting the like button, tell your friends about us so that the channel can grow. Until next time, be mindful and be committed to becoming the best possible person you can be. Bye-bye.